If you think buying seed means you own it, buckle up, plot twist ahead. Today, a farmer can spend thousands on seed and still be told, look, don't touch, next season. How did we get here? Short answer, the fine print. Because in the modern seed industry, you don't own your harvest, you license it, like your Spotify songs or the apps on your phone, which means the company can yank it or sue you if you color outside the lines. In the old days, a good farmer saved the best grain. Grandpa called it wisdom. Today, some lawyers call it infringement. It sounds absurd until you realize how perfectly legal and painfully airtight it all is. This is the story of how a handful of companies turned saving seeds into a potential crime. Patents, contracts, control, and how one tiny bag tag signature swung a gavel over rural America. Here's the twist. Farmers don't buy most modern seeds. They rent them for a single season. That's right. The seed in your hand is a piece of intellectual property protected by a license called a technology or stewardship agreement. It says, you may plant this seed once. You may harvest and sell the resulting crop, but you may not save, clean, or replant any portion of that crop for next year. Even opening the bag counts as legal acceptance. That clause alone changed everything. Generations of farmers were taught to save their best seed. Now they could be sued for it. These agreements also give companies inspection rights. They can visit your farm, collect samples, review records, and even fly overhead to make sure you're not replanting. And if your neighbor suspects you are, there's a hotline for that. It's all in the paperwork. Dry legal language that quietly replaced ownership with permission. Why so strict? Because the seed's value isn't just biological, it's technological. A gene here, a resistance trait there, each protected by a patent worth millions. The company doesn't sell you biology, it sells you the temporary right to use its invention. And that shift, from farmer to licensee, is the moment seeds became software. But every license needs a law behind it. And that's where the story gets murky. You've probably heard that farmers have a right to save seed. They used to, under the Plant Variety Protection Act, PVPA, of 1970. That law let farmers save seed from certain protected varieties for replanting on their own farms. It even allowed limited sharing among neighbors. But then came utility patents, the same type of patent used for inventions like engines, electronics, or drugs. When a seed contains a patented trait, like herbicide tolerance or pest resistance, it's treated as an invention, not a traditional crop variety. That means replanting it is legally the same as manufacturing a patented product without permission. The PVPA's farmer's privilege doesn't apply. The patent wins every time. And so, without any dramatic announcement, the custom of saving seed became a form of patent infringement. It didn't take new fences or laws, just a small clause on a government form. To the average farmer, it felt like an invisible line had been drawn across their field. One side belonged to tradition, the other to lawyers. The case that nailed the coffin shut was Bowman versus Monsanto. Vernon Bowman, an Indiana farmer, found a clever workaround. Instead of buying expensive patented seed, he bought cheap mixed soybeans from a grain elevator. Knowing some of them likely carried Monsanto's Roundup Ready gene, he planted them, sprayed herbicide, saved the survivors, the resistant ones, and replanted them. He thought it was fair. He bought them legally, after all. Monsanto disagreed. The case went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. Bowman argued patent exhaustion, the principle that once you buy a patented product, the patent holder's control over that item ends. But the court ruled unanimously against him. Their logic was simple. Buying a seed doesn't give you the right to make more of that seed. Planting and harvesting is reproduction, and reproduction of a patented invention is infringement. That 2013 decision became the industry's shield. From then on, the rule was absolute. You can plant it once, but you can't keep it. Bowman lost the case, and the right to replant. Farmers across the country lost the same thing without ever stepping into a courtroom. Rules only work if someone enforces them, and enforcement became a quiet, relentless machine. Throughout the 2000s, farmers began receiving letters demanding records, invoices, and field data. Some were visited by investigators or private detectives, Others reported low-flying planes photographing their crops. The companies insisted they were simply protecting their patents, but in tight-knit rural communities, it felt like surveillance. Some farmers fought back in court and lost. Others settled out of fear of legal fees that could reach six figures. The company's lawyers were always ready, and most farmers didn't have the time or money to fight. One farmer said it best: "They don't need to sue everyone, just enough to make the rest of us afraid." Even the idea of a neighbor calling the compliance hotline was enough to divide communities. Friends stopped sharing equipment or even casual planting advice. Saving seed used to be a symbol of independence. Now it was a potential liability. The countryside changed. Where neighbors once traded grain, they now traded rumors. And just when it couldn't get more tense, chemistry entered the picture. Herbicides were supposed to simplify farming, not spark feuds. But when Dicamba-resistant soybeans hit the market, things got messy. The chemical kills broadleaf weeds effectively, but it also drifts easily. A gust of wind can send it floating onto neighboring fields, scorching crops that aren't resistant. In Arkansas, complaints poured in: cupped leaves, damaged fields, broken relationships. Farmers who didn't plant the new system found themselves forced to switch just to avoid losing their crops to drift. And then came tragedy. In 2016, a long-simmering dispute between two farmers over Dicamba drift ended in violence. Mike Wallace, a farmer who refused to use the chemical, was shot and killed after confronting a neighbor's worker. His death symbolized a deeper fracture in farm country, a place where innovation, competition, and trust once coexisted. Now, herbicides divided communities the same way licenses divided fields. Technology promised efficiency, it delivered dependency and conflict, and that dependency was no accident. Over time, smaller seed companies disappeared or were absorbed into conglomerates. What used to be dozens of regional brands collapsed into just a few names. By 2018, two corporations, Bayer, which bought Monsanto, and Corteva, controlled more than half of all U.S. corn, soybean, and cottonseed sales. Globally, 4 companies dominated most of the commercial seed trade. That kind of concentration changes everything. When only a few players control the genetics, they also control the prices, the traits, and the terms. They decide what technologies reach the market, and what licenses you'll sign to access them. Even if you wanted to avoid patented traits, good luck finding non-patented seed with equal yield or disease resistance. The high-performance genetics live behind a paywall. For many farmers, the choice isn't whether to sign the license, it's whether they can afford not to. And so, with every merger and every new trait release, the walls closed in. Farmers had access to the best technology in history, but the least freedom to use it their way. Okay, you might say, patents expire. Doesn't that mean the seeds eventually become public again? In theory, yes. In practice, almost never. Modern seeds are built like software bundles. One trait may expire, but it's stacked with newer ones that are still patented. That keeps the entire package locked under license. Even if a single patent lapses, the license term still forbids saving seed. And since every year brings new genetic upgrades, farmers rarely plant old versions anyway. Then there's the practical side. Cleaning, storing, and replanting seed at scale is risky. Without specialized equipment, germination can drop, and contamination is common. So most growers simply buy fresh seed and sign fresh contracts every season. That's why patent expiration feels more like theory than freedom. The gate technically opens, but the road behind it is blocked by paperwork, risk, and economics. The result? Even when time runs out on the patent clock, the company's control barely flinches. Fast forward to now. Regulators are starting to notice what farmers have been saying for years. The market isn't truly free. The FTC and several state attorneys general are investigating whether seed companies use loyalty or rebate programs to lock dealers into exclusive contracts. Farmers argue these deals discourage stores from carrying cheaper generic or independent options. Class action lawsuits have followed, accusing the industry of stifling competition and inflating prices. If these cases succeed, they could open space for smaller players, maybe even generic seed companies that revive farmer choice. But even with more competition, the core legal model remains. Patents still govern traits. licenses still restrict replanting. A competitive market might make seed cheaper, but it won't make it free. In other words, the monopoly might soften, but the leash stays. So here's the answer in one line. Farmers can't legally replant their own seeds because modern seeds are patented inventions, and planting them creates new copies of that invention, which breaks patent law. But that's just the law. The deeper story is about power. For centuries, a farmer could hold in their hand the future of their family, a seed they grew, selected, and saved. Now, that same hand holds a product licensed by a corporation, guarded by lawyers, and traceable by barcode. What once symbolized independence has become a subscription, and that shift has ripple effects far beyond agriculture. Because the same licensing logic is spreading, from tractors with lockdown software to farm data platforms that charge subscription fees to access your own harvest records. The question isn't just, why can't farmers replant? It's, who gets to own the means of growing food in the first place? In one sentence, most modern seeds aren't sold, they're licensed. Utility patents protect the genetic traits, and replanting those seeds equals reproducing a patented invention. That's why farmers can't legally save them, even if they bought them fair and square. What do you think? Should farmers have a right to save and replant seed on their own land once they've paid for it, maybe after a few seasons? Or should companies keep full patent control to protect innovation? Comment your take below. This debate goes deeper than farming. It's about who owns the future of food. If you thought seeds were complicated, wait until you see what's happening with farm data. Equipment companies are quietly using the same licensing tricks, locking farmers out of their own machines and charging subscriptions for access to data from fields they already farm. That's next time. The digital harvest, how tractors and data became the new seeds.